Good morning, everyone. So, respiration in human beings, we are going to complete it today. It is going to be again a general topic. Most of you know a lot about this. Only thing new will be from 10th standard perspective point of view is how alveoli facilitate efficient exchange of gases. Okay. So let us look at the process in which humans take in oxygen from the air. So first of all, we will look at the figure. This is the figure of human respiratory system. You can see there is a nasal passage, there are nostrils, then there is trachea, rings of cartilage, bronchi, bronchioles, alveolar sacs, and all these delicate structures are protected by rib cage. Okay, and here they have zoomed these balloon-like structures, which are also called as alveoli, in order to show how does it looks like in the magnified view. So let us look each of these structure and their functions in detail. Now, the first thing that encounters the air is our nose. Okay, air comes in through the nose, goes past the fine hairs. You know that inside the nostrils, inside the nose, there are a lot of fine hairs which are present inside the nose. And what is the function of those fine hairs? For what purpose they are there? Yes, for blocking dust, for smell. For smell, you have receptors. Ved, I am asking about the role of hairs. They act as filters. Yes. Okay, yes, to block the dust and into the lungs. Once it passes through nostrils, then through trachea, and then finally it goes to lungs. There are rings of cartilage in the throat which make sure it holds its shape and does not collapse. So if you see this diagram, these are the rings of cartilage. Now, function could be asked, like why rings of cartilage is present. It is present because it holds it in shape and it does not collapse in the absence of air. Suppose if there is no air inside this tracheal column, then what will happen? This column can collapse in the absence of these rings of cartilage. So it prevents collapsing action. Okay. The windpipe branches out into two. One branch goes into each lung and branches out more and more. So this is basically a trachea. Then you can see its division. One division or one branch is going in one, and the other branch is going in the other lungs. And then finally they are dividing like this, just like you draw the diagram for roots, something like that. They are going to be divided finally. Finally, at the end of each branch are small balloon-like sacs, which are also called as alveoli, and they are covered with thin capillaries. So you can see these divisions. These are nothing small divisions. They are called as bronchioles. And at the end of each bronchioles, you can see a alveoli, that is balloon-like structures present. You can also see a magnified view of alveoli where you can see these red and blue things. What are these? These are capillaries. Why do you think that the alveoli needs to be surrounded by blood capillaries? And what will happen if they are not surrounded by blood capillaries? Why, like in case of digestion also, nutrition also, we have seen a villi, which were finger-like projections. They were very well surrounded by the blood capillaries. Yes, for exchange of gases, because whatever oxygen you are taking during the process of respiration, that oxygen needs to be transported to each and every part of the body. But who will do that job? Who will do the job of transportation? Blood, circulatory system. And that is why it is important that there should be a fine network of capillaries around alveoli or around any structure where there is a exchange taking place. Okay. The walls of the alveoli and the capillaries are so thin that the gases can move directly between the two. So can you see this alveoli structures? You can see that air is taken inside. Okay. Then you can see when you take air inside, oxygen is coming, and then it is distributing to these pigments, to the blood. Now, what will the blood do? The blood will transport this oxygen to each and every part of the body. Your body will utilize that oxygen in various life process or in various life activities that you perform. Then the body will release CO2. Then what will blood do? Again, the blood will bring that waste material CO2 from the body. Like this, you can see venous blood in. So it is bringing out that CO2 rich blood, or what you also call as deoxygenated blood. De means removal of something, that is deoxygenated. Now, once it has brought CO2, it will again give back to those balloon-like structures which are called as alveoli, and then it is again sent out through our nostrils. So this is how the exchange takes place. When we breathe in, the diaphragm flattens out. This is basically the diaphragm, the curvy structure that you can see. And the rib cage lifts up and out. And because of this, when you are respiring or when you are undergoing the process of inhalation, the ribs move out and diaphragm flattens so as to increase or so as to make lot of space so that our lungs can withhold that amount of air. The exchange of gases take place between the air in the alveoli and the blood in the capillaries. As we have discussed, alveoli are also surrounded by network of fine capillaries or blood capillaries. So this is how the exchange is being facilitated. Blood has a pigment called hemoglobin which attracts oxygen. So oxygen from the air goes into the blood. So once you are taking oxygen, that oxygen is binding with hemoglobin. That is a red pigment that is present in your blood, and hemoglobin will only transport that oxygen to each and every part of the body cell. So one molecule of hemoglobin, that is one hemoglobin, can bind with four oxygen. Okay, so one hemoglobin can bind with four oxygen. So you can assume its efficiency, how much our body is efficient in transporting oxygen to each and every part of the body cell. You can see these are the red blood cells, carbon dioxide out, so, how the exchange is taking place, as I have already explained. These are the network of fine capillaries which are very well surrounded around alveoli region. Carbon dioxide, which is also a waste product of respiration, which is in the blood, goes into the air in the alveoli. So again, once all the waste product is produced in the form of carbon dioxide, the blood vessels will bring it, they will give it to alveoli, and from alveoli that will be transported out. That completes the gas exchange. Then with the reverse process, we breathe out. So this cycle keeps on going, like there is no pause. It keeps on going because we are continuously respiring. The diaphragm curves up, the ribs bear down on the lungs, and the air whooshes out of the body. So these are the changes that takes place in the size and shape of the ribs, in the structure of diaphragm while you are inhaling and while you are exhaling. Okay, so we will go through the text which is given in the textbook. In human beings, air is taken into the body through nostril. So that is the first interaction. The air passing through the nostril is filtered by fine hairs that line the passage. The passage is also lined with mucus, which helps in this process. Helps in this process means filtering the dust particles. Also, because it is a mucus, it will smoothen the nasal passage that is there. From here, the air passes through the throat and into the lungs. Rings of cartilage are present in the throat. These ensure that air passage does not collapse. So please remember the function why rings of cartilage are present. In case if there is absence of air, so it should not happen that the whole tracheal column is undergoing collapse. It should not happen. So in order to prevent that particular thing, rings of cartilage are present in the throat. Okay. Within the lungs, the passage divides into smaller and smaller tubes, which finally terminate into balloon-like structures that are also called as alveoli. Now, the alveoli provide a surface where exchange of gases can take place. So, these statements are important. These statements could be as it is put under assertion and reason type. Okay, so please go through each and every chapter that is a part of term 1. Read each and every chapter. While reading it, if you feel this could be important, this could be a part of assertion reason type, please underline it and do it now only, because now you have time to do all these things, so that once the final exam begins, the board exam begins, you just have to look over those highlighted words or highlighted sentences and not just go through whole of the textbook. Okay. The walls of the alveoli contains an extensive network of blood vessels. As we have seen in earlier years, when we breathe in, we lift our ribs and flatten our diaphragm, and the chest cavity becomes large as a result. Because of this, air is sucked into the lungs and fills the expanded alveoli. So these movements which are happening when we are inhaling, this is all due to the fact that we have to take lot of air inside, take lot of oxygen inside. The blood brings CO2 from the rest of the body for the release into alveoli, and the oxygen in the alveolar air is taken up by the blood in the alveolar blood vessel to be transported to all the cells. This is nothing but whatever we have seen in the PPT in magnified view, how the exchange of gases takes place. That is what is explained over here. Okay. During the breathing cycle, when air is taken in and let out, the lungs always contain a residual volume of air so that there is sufficient time for oxygen to be absorbed and for the carbon dioxide to be released. Residual volume of air means whenever there is exhalation process, it never happens that you exhale the whole thing out. There is still a volume of air that is remaining inside the lungs. That is nothing but residual volume of air. Okay. When the body size of animals is large, the diffusion pressure alone cannot take care of oxygen delivery to all parts of the body. So if you remember the first lecture of life process, there this was a question, in text question, that why diffusion is unable to meet the demands for a complex organism. So there most of you have written that diffusion is a slow process, animal body is huge, it will take long time, in order to meet the oxygen requirement. So that is true. When the body size of animal is large, the diffusion pressure alone cannot take care of oxygen delivery to all parts of the body. Instead, respiratory pigments take up oxygen from the air in the lungs and carry it to the tissues which are deficient in oxygen before releasing it. Okay, and what is the respiratory pigment that is present in human body? Hemoglobin, correct. So hemoglobin, which has a very high affinity for oxygen. This pigment is present in the red blood corpuscles, that is RBCs. Okay. Carbon dioxide is more soluble in water than oxygen, and hence it is mostly transported in the dissolved form in the blood. It is transported in the form of carbonate ions, HC3, HCO3 minus. So this is the form H capital B small Sanskruti for hemoglobin. Okay, and one hemoglobin can bind with 4 oxygen molecules. This was all about human respiratory system. Also go through this yellow text, yellow box. If the alveolar surface were spread out, it would cover about 80 meters square. All the factual information, just underline it and remember it for MCQ purpose point of view. Okay. Question number one is, what advantage over an aquatic organism does a terrestrial organism have with regard to obtaining oxygen for respiration? Yes, answer this. Think about the amount of oxygen that an organism can breathe in at a time. So aquatic organisms have to breathe in O2 dissolved in the oxygen. Percentage is much less than what is present in the air. And even we have seen, due to that percentage of oxygen which is very very less in water, therefore the rate is very very higher in case of aquatic organism, whereas terrestrial organisms in comparison to those have lower breathing rate. Okay, oxygen level is higher, no doubt, but the rate is higher in case of aquatic organisms. Next question. What are the different ways in which glucose is oxidized to provide energy in various organisms? So if there is a presence of oxygen, what are the byproducts which are formed when glucose get oxidized? Glucose is broken down into pyruvate. Pyruvate is further broken down into which three things in the presence of oxygen? CO2 plus water plus energy. Now again the same thing, glucose is broken down into pyruvate, but if there is absence of oxygen, what all will be the byproducts? Yes, so if you see this chart is very very important. Lack of oxygen, it forms lactic acid plus energy. There was also one question like this, ki if there are muscle cramps, what all remedies you can follow, or what all remedies you can take in order to avoid that muscle cramps, or in order to reduce the effects of cramps, what all you can do? Yes, if there is a formation of lactic acid when you do a lot of physical exercise, lot of physical activity, and there is a formation of lactic acid, due to this acid you get muscle cramps. What can be done in order to reduce the effect of those cramps? Tell general home remedies you must have followed sometimes in your life. Apply oil, okay, drink water, yes, stretching or hot water bath. Hot water will also be very very effective. Okay, hot oil, massage, that will also helps in relieving somewhat cramps that you are getting. Okay. We also have that water, yeah, heating pad or water jacket that contains a coil. Okay, so those are the quick remedies that we can apply. So remember that as well. In case of absence of yeast, absence of oxygen that takes place in yeast, yes, it is fermentation. So there is release of ethanol. Ethanol is a two carbon molecule. We have already discussed under carbon and its compound. If the root word is it is two. If it is myth, it is one. If it is prop, the number of carbon is C3. Okay. Then there is release of carbon dioxide plus energy. Energy is released in all the three cases, only the difference is the main product. So just keep those things in mind. Question number 3 is, how is oxygen and CO2 transported in human beings? So, just go through these in-text and exercise questions in order to know that whether you have understood the concept or not. They will not come as it is subjective in the term 1, but just to make it clear. Okay. So you can write about alveolar functions and all. And question number 4, how are lungs designed in human being to maximize the area of exchange of gases? This is again related to alveoli exchange.
If you like our videos, do share them and subscribe to our channel. If you want awesome quizzes, write to us. Keep watching and keep learning with Walnut.